This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 120. We're talking about self-promotion. If you don't promote yourself enough, you're not going to get any business. But if you promote yourself too much, people will start ignoring you. What's the balance? That's what we're talking about on this episode.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
I went to a place in town the other day that's a creperie. Is that how you say it? Creperie?
I don't eat that stuff.
They serve crepes. And I was really excited because they had a gluten-free vegan crepe.
Was it the food truck? Crepe Diem?
No, it was not that food truck. But they serve crepes. And I haven't had one in years, and I was excited to get one. And so I order my vegan, gluten-free crepe and make sure it has no butter on it, because one of the options with the basic one I was getting had butter and sugar, and I was making sure it was vegan butter.
And she brought out a piece of cardboard.
But I know. No, it was actually quite good. But they brought it out to the table, and it's this beautiful gluten-free vegan crepe, and it's topped with all this whipped cream. And I asked her, I was like, is this whipped cream vegan? Is it dairy-free? And she was like, I have no idea. I'm thinking, I went to the trouble of ordering this allergy-free item, and then they top it full of whipped cream, so I had to send it back.
You and I were out this weekend just to give something to contrast that to. You had a vegan pizza. I had a regular pizza, but it had tofu on it.
Mm-hmm.
Got a to-go box because we were done. Couldn't eat 2 whole pizzas. And she said, would you like 2 separate boxes? And I just had 1 piece left. I go, no, the same box is fine. She goes, okay, I just didn't know with the vegan thing. And I thought that was really nice.
I know a lot of people have allergies, which is what I have. I have certain allergies. So you have to separate your food from other food. And so that was nice of the pizza lady, but
don't let that cheese contaminate your pizza.
I know, but that was fine. But the big glob of whipped cream on my vegan crepe was a little interesting.
That's where we draw the line. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more products, make more money. We're business optimizers. We're going to show you how to be more efficient in your marketing, finding the hidden money sitting right in front of you. Sometimes that has to do with options, like a vegan crepe or a tofu pizza. So there's a problem on social media. It's an epidemic. And that is self-promotion on social media. There's a fine line of self-promotion on social media, and really just in all marketing, in that if you don't promote yourself, you're going to starve. But if you cross that line and promote yourself too much, you're going to starve as well, because you're going to annoy people and they're just going to turn off what you're saying.
When did social media stop being social and just start to be a broadcast for business owners?
Well, we're going to talk about that. I think part of it was that you had businesses come in. They were used to the broadcast form of marketing, newspaper, radio, television. That's why we call it broadcasting. They didn't know how to use some of these new forms where people could actually talk back. So that's part of it. And part of it is you don't have to engage when you're broadcasting. You sit there on a mic, let her rip.
When it comes to self-promotion, as you said, David, you don't want to be on either end of the spectrum. You don't want to be promoting yourself too little, and you don't want to be promoting yourself too much. And when you find that perfect middle, that perfect ratio for yourself and for your business in terms of self-promotion, that's when you can start to see the results. And the results are going to be more followers, more engagement, leading to more customers and more sales.
I want to give an example. Let's give a few examples, then we can break them down, explain what we would do in a better way to approach things. I think self-promotion that adds value first and self-promotion second, I think that's the way to go. In sort of an ironic twist, you and I are members of a social media marketing group. These are people that all they do is social media, but they've got an old school mailing list that everybody has access to. Because we're in Nashville, we've got a lot of musicians who are involved in just about everything. You take a cab, there's a musician driving it. You go to a coffee shop, there's a musician making your coffee. Waitress, she's a musician too. So not surprisingly, there are musicians in this group. And a couple of weeks ago, we had an email from somebody who had gotten on the list, somebody who's a member of the group. We all know her. She said, hey, come to my gig. Got a gig. Come see me play music. Here are the dates. Here are the times. Not the way to approach self-promotion.
That's what happens when you do it wrong. You're just blasting out to people that don't really care about what you're doing, about something that's not even related to why they're in the group or why they're on social media or why they're following you.
Well, it's hijacking. It's taking a list that was meant for something and making it for something else. With that said, there are ways which she could have done that, and we would have actually paid attention and possibly supported her on that. For example, if there were a social media site that she had found that was just for musicians, or she was using it for her music, she could say, hey, found this new social media site, trying these techniques with my music. Check it out here. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I've got a gig. I'm going to see what I can do to promote that gig using this social media. If you'd like to come, more than happy to see you there.
She definitely didn't find the right ratio for her and the right balance of how to promote herself. Too much, too little. She was definitely on the too much side.
Was value first, self-promotion second. If she had sent an email that was telling us something to do with social media, because it's a social media mailing list, we would have paid attention.
Oh, sure.
That would have gotten us in there. We would have been more connected to her. And it just so happens she's a musician. Okay, good. So is everybody in Nashville. Just so happens she's doing a gig. Hey, maybe we're free that night. Let's go see her. It's the runoff. Instead, what she did is she isolated everybody. You're not going to pay attention to her or take her as seriously next time.
No, I doubt anyone went to her gig.
No, nobody. And she pissed everybody off.
Mm-hmm. But nobody wanted to say anything because no one wanted to have bad blood with her.
People try to be nice. There's another example of this. And this may have been something that we've talked about here because this got national news. It was crazy. It was a soccer coach in a very conservative area right outside of Nashville. Had all the parents' emails because he's teaching soccer. He was also a musician. These musicians are getting us into trouble. Again, very conservative area. This guy was very conservative, had written a song, anti-Obama, couldn't stand Obama, written kind of a novelty country song. Sent it to everybody on the mailing list, thinking he's going to get some traction for this song. They're going to pass it to all their friends, and all of a sudden it's going to be a hit. Instead, everybody got pissed. And again, this is a super conservative group of people that he's sending to. They probably hate Obama just as much as he did, but they were on their kids' soccer list. He hijacked that thing trying to do self-promotion.
Are you going to sing a little bit of that jingle, David? I want to hear what that sounds like.
You know, I want to respect his copyright, so I'm not going to use that here. Don't want to have to pay any royalties or get in trouble with our distribution partners that they would have to pay, and it's not licensed, so no.
Too bad. Because I was really looking forward to that.
Well, I do. Speaking of Laurel, maybe this is the time to introduce it. You know, I got you your own theme song. We were talking about that a few episodes ago.
You totally did.
You needed your own theme song. Why don't we play that right now?
Let's play it.
Laurel Staples on Red Podcast.
There it was, Laurel Staples' new theme song. Whenever she does something cool, we're going to play that. We might have to play that a few more times this
I think
episode.
you're going to be playing it constantly if you're playing it when I do something cool. Because it's just going to be going off all the time.
Slow jams, Laurel Staples. Back to self-promotion. That would be the way to do it.
I think I'm just going to play that clip all the time when I'm promoting myself and just like go around playing that clip. And then everyone's going to follow me and I'm going to have great engagement. Isn't that how it works, David?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to become a hit.
Yep.
Just release it out there. Hey, I've got another promotion story for you. This one actually involves me. I was actually surprised at how this happened. You know Reddit, right?
Yes.
Reddit.com, they've got a Nashville message board, and I was on there. And again, musicians infiltrating this. It's Music City, USA, right? What would you expect? Some 16-year-old, he's come into Nashville, wants to know how he can have a career in the music industry. And everybody on there was being a jerk to the guy. Now, it just so happens that I've been in the music industry, wrote a book on how to be successful. It's free, so I'm not making money off of it. I knew the book was going to help the guy. I said, hey, I know you've gotten a lot of snarky comments, but you actually have an opportunity to make a living here. Here's a book that I wrote about it that will provide you more information. It's free. Almost right away, a guy who knew me from the radio says, "Hey, David, aren't you going to tell them about your radio show?" See, I wasn't going to do that. I thought it was too much promotion. Now, would the radio show help? Yeah, absolutely. But I was just going to give him one thing. Then this guy came in. He actually helped me out. And my response to him was, "Hey, I'm just trying to be a good citizen here, but since you mentioned it, here's an episode of the radio show. It's available online, and it might help you as well."
What do you feel like the difference is between what you did in that situation versus what some of these other people are doing when they promote themselves? And we've been talking about email list, but also when they promote themselves mainly on social media and other outlets.
Well, initially, I had something that was going to help him. I had a book, 70,000 words that's going to help him. Certainly more than a snarky comment on social media that told him how to drive a cab or learn how to make coffee drinks or go back to school. So that wasn't helping him at all. Now, I could have given him some advice, but it's not going to be as good as 70,000 words. I'm not asking for anything. So I say, "Hey, go ahead." That was the litmus test to me. That's why I did it, because I was the guy who had the book. Now, if I knew another guy's book that was just as helpful, it was free, was going to help him as much, I would have given him that. That's where I think that the line is drawn. Is, are you helping people, and would you promote it if you weren't involved?
I think one of the main differences that I'm seeing in the approach that you took was, how can I add value to this person versus the lady who sent out the information about her music gig, just wanting people to come. She wasn't adding any value. Or the Obama song where he just wanted people to listen to his song and he wasn't adding any value. So that's the main difference. So let's go in to talk about some examples there of how people can add value when they're promoting themselves.
There's a ratio. A man named T.A. McCain got a site. It's called gist.com. Maybe it's gist.com, gist.com regardless. He's got what he calls the 5-3-2 ratio. And the ratio is something like this. If you're going to do 10 updates on social media, 5 of those updates should be content from others, 3 content from you, and 2 personal updates. I don't completely agree with that, but I think he's going in the right direction. I don't think it matters if the content is from you or if the content is from others, as long as it's helpful to people.
I think what he's saying there with the content from others is that you're adding value there in 2 ways. Is you're adding value because you're posting content from other people that can help the people following you, which is really great. And then by posting that content from others, you're helping those people and you're adding value to those people who created the content by spreading their content. So I kind of like that approach. Even though I agree with you, David, if the content helps people, it doesn't really matter it's from you or other people. But I think sharing other people's content just has that kind of added bonus of adding value to them.
Yeah, it's a community thing. It's like a big social media commune. Everybody's helping each other out.
Exactly. I think we explained why sharing content and adding value is helpful. And you shared that example about giving away your book and how that was helpful. But let's talk about the 2 personal ones that McCann is talking about. Why do you think that's important to do?
It's the same reason that we always start Red Podcasts with something a little more personal. Today we're talking about orders that we made in restaurants that either worked or they didn't work.
The creperie.
The creperie, the pizza place. That's just to let people know who you're dealing with. So I think letting people in on some personal aspects of your life. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros. It's just a bunch of text, and there's not a lot to differentiate you.
You don't want to look like a business robot. You want to show your personality, show that you're interacting with other people in your life and doing things, or you have a pet or whatever that is. Probably don't post pictures of your meal that you eat every day unless you're a food blogger, and then that makes sense.
Well, the ratio, whether it's self-promotion or whether it's talking about yourself, like a, hey, look at me, just because I'm involved makes this interesting type of way, it's still the same. The most important aspect in people's lives is themselves. So when you're going to a website, when you're listening to a radio show, listening to a podcast, reading a book, you're not thinking about the author. That's not the reason that you purchased that book, for example. You're thinking when you're reading it, how is this affecting me? Sharing personal information, sometimes that helps because you see yourself in that person. It's something that makes them more relatable. But beyond that, that's it.
And it can build trust as well.
Yeah,
when you
absolutely.
relate to that person, it builds that trust. Let's talk
Yeah.
about having a bad ratio, David.
The bad ratio,
Mm-hmm.
Buffer, if you're using the application Buffer on Twitter, for example, that could be a bad ratio. That's the broadcast, one to many. I've seen guys on there every 7, 8, 15 minutes hit the same link, the same copy, not even changing up the copy. It's the same thing. And if you're somebody like me that doesn't follow a lot of people on Twitter, for example, I'm going to get hit with those all the time. And I start to get what they call banner blindness. Back in the day, late 90s internet, where there were all sorts of banners, advertisers wanted you to click on them. It gets to the point where you don't even recognize anymore. You just work through them. You think about the mailing list that you're on that have advertisements at the top. You think of the podcasts that you listen to where there are advertisements the first 30 seconds. Just fast forward through those. You think about the websites that you're on with AdSense, the Google ads. You just don't pay attention to those anymore. You get used to them and you ignore them. Same thing with social media updates.
That being said, how many times do you think you should post a link to a social media site such as Twitter?
Well, we could go to the experts for that. Guy Kawasaki. Did you go to Guy Kawasaki's speech with me here in town?
I did not.
You did not. Next time. Well, Guy Kawasaki said this. He said 4 times in a 24-hour period using the same copy. Now, why use the same copy? As I mentioned, for me, I like to change things when it comes to copy. But I can understand that using the same copy, if somebody's clicked on it, they're not going to click on it again. You're going to get brand new people each time. But yeah, 4 times in a 24-hour period.
That seems like a lot, but the half-life of a tweet is like 2 seconds, especially if you're following a lot of people.
I think it's about 5 minutes at this point, yeah. That's not much, though.
It's not much. Every time I put out a tweet, 10 more tweets come in, and it's hard to follow people. So you do have to consistently put out content, in that you can't just stick one tweet up there and expect people to see it. You do have to have some repetitiveness about that.
It's a fine line, though, and it's easy to overstep your bounds. There's people, as I mentioned, that I've unfollowed because they just keep hammering that same message 7, 8, 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said earlier you didn't really agree necessarily with McCann's ratio of 5 to 3 to 2, but there's something about that ratio that does work. So let's talk about what it is in that ratio that will help you get more followers and more engagement and turn those people into customers.
The first thing that you hit upon is that if you're using his ratio of sending things out from other people, you're developing that community.
Mm-hmm.
Because of reciprocity, somebody whom you've helped to get the word out about what he's doing may be more likely to help you out in the future. But beyond that, I think it's just a long game. I think it's about helping people with good content. Content comes first, self-promotion comes later. I think it gets you in that habit, because if it's content from other people, you're not involved in that. So you start thinking, is this helpful to the audience or not?
Also, it's education-based marketing, which I think is really effective when you educate your followers, your customers, your clients on things that are going to help them and things that are going to help them do whatever they need to do. That's a really great way to think about it. So you said earlier, David, it's not whether you're sending out your content or you're sending out somebody else's content. If you're adding value and you're educating your followers or your potential customers, that's really what matters.
I think you need to think about the conversation, not the broadcast, not the one to many. Education-based marketing starts a conversation. Again, you're not broadcasting here. You're trying to start a conversation, something where everybody can have their own part of it. And by coming to you, they're setting you up as an authority. When you ask somebody a question, you're setting them up as an authority. That's going to help you. In the long term, that helps promote you, whereas the broadcast might actually promote just specific links. So it's a much better strategy in that way. When you can add enough value in somebody's life, it doesn't matter how that value comes about. They still credit you for it. It's not unlike when somebody introduces you to a great connection. You're going to give that person credit for that connection. And if that connection helps you more than the person did himself, he still gets the credit. If you got questions or comments, reach out to us. We're at redpodcast.com. You know where else we are, Laurel?
Where?
The Red Podcast app. We're in Google App Store, the Amazon App Store, and also Apple's App Store. Pick your poison. It is there to search for Real Entrepreneur Development. If you want to get Red Podcast directly through the app, we've got it for you, and it's free.
That's exciting. It's awesome. I got it on the front page of my phone so I can hear myself all the time.
If you've got a topic that you'd like to see us cover here on the Red Podcast, reach out to us. redpodcast.com is where to do that. You can get to us directly through that site and also via Twitter at The Red Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.